The wreckage is spread out over a huge area of the desert, hampering French army teams working to recover bodies and salvage pieces of wreckage important to establishing the cause of the mid-air explosion. Army teams are also being held up by shifting sands that threaten to cover bodies and debris. All 171 people aboard are thought to have been killed instantly. One soldier says anyone who did survive would have died shortly after from the extreme temperatures. Authorities believe the explosion took place in the front of the plane, in the baggage hold, giving the crew little time to react before the aircraft, on its way from Chad to Paris, broke up. An Iranian-backed terrorist group is said to have claimed responsibility for the bombing.
This year's tournament, held in January, was a first for the Hunter, truly international tennis on a local stage. Ivan Lendl, Charlie Steig, John Fitzgerald and Wally Mercer doing battle. Hundreds watched the matches live and thousands more from home, NBN telecasting the last 2 days, and the final between Lendl and Steig seen around the country via the 9 network.
Lendl, the world's #2 tennis player at the moment.
The big attraction for the players at Salamander is the rebound ace surface of centre court, still one of just a few in Australia. It's the same surface used at the National Tennis Centre. The players see the tournament as valuable practice for the Australian Open, held in the middle of January. Next year's Port Stephens Classic will be played over 3 days, the 5th, 6th and 7th of January. It will again be televised by NBN, which is also negotiating with a major network. Ivan Lendl will top the bill at next year's Classic, facing Charlie Steig, Johannes Svensson and an as-yet unconfirmed fourth man. The style of this year's tournament has been changed to give the spectators maximum exposure to all the players.
We're going to have a round-robin format this year, and that means that Lendl will be playing on the 3 days, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We feel that that way the people know that who they'll be seeing each day. And of course it's good for the players because they get to play a different style of play.
NIB has targeted sport for a large percentage of its advertising dollar. The NIB Falcons have been the main beneficiaries, although the fund is also spent in other areas. Now local cricket will enjoy some advantages of being part of the NIB stable. General Manager Colin Rogers today handed over the first cheque to President of the Newcastle Cricket Association, Tom Locker. NIB has not disclosed the amount of the sponsorship, which will be renegotiated each year. Among other things, money will go towards the Young Player of the Year award, new coaching initiatives and the staging of the Sheffield Shield clash between New South Wales and Queensland in early December.
And it gives us the opportunity to broaden the scope of cricket to include juniors in our association. And at the same time, it's our hope that we can assist the whole 12 clubs with some finances at the end of the year.
However, the move towards cricket may preempt a swing away from other NIB commitments. There is a chance the Health Fund may not renew its high-profile sponsorship of the NIB Falcons next season. Negotiations are underway and an announcement should be made within a week.
At a lunchtime gathering, the Newcastle Chamber of Commerce today released a full report of the tour to local businessmen. The study tour stopped over in Singapore, Japan and Korea and found most countries eager to expand their power stations and steel-making plants. This expansion would open a door for increased coal sales through Newcastle and multi-million-dollar contracts for local groups interested in supplying design and construction plans. Chamber President David Lamarchand says the region would also establish other niches in the world marketplace.
We believe that the Hunter must promote the resources that it has: coal, agricultural products, sheep, byproducts, wool. They're the markets we must go after because we know how to promote them. We have them within our valley.
The expansion could also see the re-establishment of the cold stores and a new car industry.
Well, it was said to us that if we could provide services in the port namely looking after beef through provision of cold stores. There was potential there, and also that the assembling of cars could be done within the Newcastle region.
The Chamber warns the expansion is still to be treated with cautious optimism because major Asian companies are unsure of Australian reliability due to strong unionisation and other multinationals out for quick profits.
There is a tremendous opportunity in the Asian markets. However, we must prepare, we must plan, we must be prepared to do a lot of homework and take the long-term view in establishing trade relations with these countries.
However, the report concludes favourably, suggesting the limits of Asian industry expansion is bounded only by the willingness of local producers to build new markets. Darren Curtis for NBN News.
They are rated as Newcastle's best two junior players and are arguably Newcastle's top senior players as well. 17-year-old William O'Neill from Killingworth and 18-year-old Richard Marsh from Coal Point played in the junior singles title 2 months ago, with O'Neill taking the honours. And in 5 weeks, the pair will meet in the men's senior final. Today's award of $1,000 to Marsh and $2,000 to O'Neill was handed over by Mrs Maureen Curran, the widow of Des Curran, who was killed in a plane accident in 1981. The award had previously been dominated by Rachel McQuillan, who took the prize 3 years running. This year's two winners are hoping to follow her path onto the pro circuit. Meanwhile, a group of 22 talented youngsters from the Sydney area are at the Roach Racket Resort this week taking part in an intense training camp. And one of the chief reasons for the trip to Salamander is the court surface at the resort. With the Australian junior titles beginning next week at the National Tennis Centre in Melbourne, it's vital for the young players to get the practice on the surface that will be used.
Back home we practice on synthetic grass, and it is a little bit of a problem, I think, overall, where our kids are practicing on a surface that's a little quicker and a little lower, and you know, they have the grips and they have the court play to play on that sort of court surface, and then they come out and play on a sort of a synthetic court surface, but it's rubbery, ball bounces high, you know, different grips, different type of ball games. You know, it's starting again really for some of them.
The council will take their drastic step following thousands of dollars in damage from previous holiday periods. 3 weeks ago, this amenities block at Shelley Beach had all the toilet bowls smashed. Council workmen repaired the damage, only to have 2 more destroyed a week later. Besides physical abuse, the sheds are also splashed with graffiti. Wyong President Clem Payne says security patrols have been used before.
They were trialled over the last Christmas period and continued through the Easter holiday season. In the main, they've been successful, and Council has determined they will continue.
Council has also taken the unusual step to put in place liquor consumption bans on many of their parks and reserves.
It means that there will be no unlawful consumption of alcohol between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. on Council's reserves and parks.
The security officers can detain anyone caught breaking the bylaws. Those caught will face criminal and council prosecution. Gosford Police today launched their card system at the Central Coast Leagues Club. The unique balance came from the police designing and offering to take on the management of the card, with the local registered clubs providing $13,000 in backing to start the scheme operating. Sergeant Huey Hargraves from the Gosford Licensing Branch says their photo card has distinct advantages from other schemes because it cannot be counterfeited.
The card's got 2 devices on it. It's got ink impregnated into the glue. If they tamper with the photograph, it distorts that ink, and it also has another little tab inside there which destroys the photograph and the signature.
Applicants must apply in person to Gosford Police Station and supply relevant documents before a $10 card will be issued. Sergeant Hargraves says the card system also allows for further adaptation in the future to catch attempted forgeries.
What they're hoping to do is to be able to bring up the photograph of that person onto a screen. That's when the licensed premises purchase a screen. That's an added security device which will be impregnated into them.
Gosford Police will begin accepting application forms from next Thursday. It's expected the Gosford scheme will be implemented statewide by the end of the year. Darren Curtis for NBN News.
"18-year-old Karen Goose died just under 2 years ago, the victim of a drink driver. She and two friends, Michelle Tannish and Louise Adams, were passengers in a car which slammed into a stationary semi-trailer. The driver had a .15 blood alcohol level, 3 times the legal limit. At the time he was on bail for an alleged high-range drink driving offence.
He could have been sentenced to 17.5 years jail. Was in fact sentenced to 3 years in a detention centre with a non-parole period of 18 months, and after a few months was allowed out on weekend leave and has been released completely now.
Neville Goose saw no justice in the way the law treated his daughter's killer. He channelled his grief into a determined campaign to overhaul the state's drink driving laws. That campaign has at last been successful. Under new laws, drivers found with blood alcohol readings 3 times the legal limit will have their licences confiscated on the spot. This will overturn the existing position where those charged with drink driving can continue to drive until a court orders otherwise, the circumstance in which Karen Goose died. Neville Goose and his band of supporters have campaigned long and hard to convince the government to toughen its stance. Today, he takes heart in the knowledge that his daughter's death may prevent others.
The burden's still there and we miss her very, very much. But we know now that the government has acted, that these things really, her death hasn't been in vain in that sense. Nothing can change the situation. We can't bring her back. But we know now that we can save a lot of other people, and that does make one feel more comfortable.
More than 220 surfers from 12 Australian clubs and internationals from Hawaii will turn the clock back at the Cliff Bar Beach this weekend in the Still City Malibu Classic. And it's not just the old board rider who will compete, but surfers ranging in age from 18 to 50. Beginning at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, 4 divisions will be contested: the 8-foot open, 9-foot traditional, the old Malibu and the Masters. The local Still City Club will be represented by Peter Cornish, Roger Clements, Mark Hancock and Ron Rudder, and these surfers will encounter strong competition from the visiting board riders. Tomorrow night also sees the opening of the Motordrome season, and an excellent night of racing is planned. It will be the first time that the new expanded track will be in use, and because of the improvements, many current records are certain to be broken. Sponsored by NBN, the meeting has attracted races in super sedans, and new cars on show will be John Pines, Peter Garrett, Bob Brewer, Darryl Farrelly and Ron Pine. Other events feature modified hot rods, leader sprint cars, street stock sedans and compact speed cars. Promotions manager of the Motordrome, Peter Gabriel, is hoping that this season will see much more racing than last, when a lot of meetings had to be cancelled due to rain. Competition begins at 6 p.m.
Police will allege in court that 2 15-year-olds and a 14-year-old broke into the storage shed at the Wyong coal mine 3 weeks ago and stole 25 kilos of gelignite and 100 detonators. The thieves then sold the explosives to 2 16-year-olds for $15. The 16-year-olds, members of the local army cadets, hid the goods in bushland intending to make copper pipe bombs. Detective Dave Darcy says police were tipped off by a viewer who saw NBN's report on the theft last night.
A good tip-off as a result of someone hearing the broadcast on Channel 3. The explosive is, has immense force and can do a lot of damage to people, but even the detonators are extremely dangerous, and if they're set off they could easily destroy your hand or create a severe injury.
While we were at the police station, Detective Darcy noticed the gelignite began to sweat, placing it in an unstable condition. An Elcom representative was then called in to remove the 93 sticks. A logbook detailing the exact amounts of gelignite in the magazine and 75 kilograms of explosives still remain unaccounted for. A police motorcyclist spent most of the day searching the bushland around the area for any other explosives that may have been hidden. Despite fears that some of the explosives may still be in the hands of some juveniles, the major concern for authorities now is the lack of security around the mine. The area surrounding the magazine is guarded only by a rusted barbed wire fence that in many places has been pushed over or simply doesn't exist. Within 20 metres of the magazines, there are definite tyre tracks leading towards the building, prompting plenty of concern for authorities, afraid that the entire supply could have been hauled off at any time. Minister for Minerals and Energy Neil Pickard has called for a full report on the matter and has launched an inquiry into the security at the Wyong mine. Meanwhile, Toukley Police are continuing with a door knock and letterbox drop, asking for public assistance to find the remaining missing explosive. Darren Curtis for NBN News.
For those magnificent men and their flying machines, what better way to spend a Sunday afternoon than jumping from an 8-metre tower into Newcastle Harbour? While the domestic pilots have been out of action, these high flyers have been hard at work designing their high-tech craft.
What's it actually made of? Oh, well, bamboo, there's fiberglass involved, lots and lots of gaff tape, rubber, rope, string, everywhere. Glue.
Do you have any qualifications to design a craft like this?
Absolutely none at all. No, none whatsoever. None at all.
The pterodactyl team probably don't have a great future in the study of aerodynamics. Some more refined craft showed a little extra style, with the aim today to cover the most distance for $2,500 in prize money. However, some of the birdmen didn't have great faith in their man-made wings. How do you think you'll go?
Down. I intend to make at least 3 feet to get me clear of the wharf.
Bob McBride definitely cleared the wharf but kept the frogmen busy picking up the pieces. Some contestants were too nervous to fly and sent their wings to test the water alone, while other seemingly impressive outfits flopped with the rest of them. At the end of the day, world-rated hang glider pilot Russell Duncan won the event with a magnificent 35-metre leap into the stiff breeze.
Local activist Moya Farrell, a mother of 3 and community worker, was arrested for trespassing on the base. She says the Novocastrians became quite involved in openly defying the police force.
On Saturday night, some of us took a cross made from wire from the fence that was taken down and took that in and mounted it on the slope overlooking the radomes. We walked in, left camp about 3:15 a.m. and walked without using torches through the overland and along a gully to get up there.
Of the 9 Newcastle people involved in the protest, 5 were arrested, including 13-year-old Rask Burgout and 78-year-old Phil Jones. Phil was arrested for breaching the peace and was later released. However, the rest of the party were charged with trespass and slapped with $200 self-bail conditions. They're scheduled to appear in court on the 20th of October. All are convinced the camp was a success, drawing Australia's attention to the existence and nature of the base.
The disposal of used tyres provides one of the world's larger environmental headaches. Shredding and burying is enormously expensive, at least while they look like this. Turn them into this, though, and burying becomes not only possible but quite profitable. Waterwick is a revolutionary irrigation pipe formed out of old tyres. Manufactured in Iceland, it's been available commercially for several years, but is only now making an impact in Australia thanks to the efforts of Hunter Irrigation.
If we can get a volume of this being used, we'll find that it will consume a large volume of these rubber tyres that are causing pollution problems.
Waterwick is expensive. It costs around 50% more than traditional in-ground systems. Its pluses, however, include the very properties which have made used tyres such a problem. It's flexible, strong and slow to break down in soil. It also has the unique ability to bleed water along its entire length, rather than from a few nozzles. Hunter Irrigation is using 2 kilometres of the pipe in an environmentally conscious development at Pecolban. Waste from the hotel will be treated on site at a special mini sewerage plant. What happens to the water then is what sets this development apart. Thanks to the ex-tyre pipes, it can be released underground, providing moisture for vines and turf, rather than sprayed onto the land, eventually running off into creeks and dams.
Now, I'm not saying that anyone up here is polluting creeks and drains, but by definition, if you follow my logic that the water's on top of the ground, it then runs off into the creeks, it's got to be polluting it.
Up to now, the Institute has operated a braille and toy library and welfare service at these humble rented premises in Parry Street, Newcastle West. But it has big plans to spend $1.7 million over the next 15 months to establish a preschool for both normal youngsters and the sight and hearing impaired on this 4-hectare block of land overlooking Lake Macquarie from the top of Tingaira Drive. Mayor Ivan Welsh made the Institute's plans public today, saying Lake Macquarie Council will do all in its power to help have the centre operational by January 1991. Establishment costs will be met by the Institute, but the centre will require $250,000 a year to run.
That will involve a great deal of fundraising. We are not seeking government subsidy on the capital cost. That will all be met by fundraising. And we will get some subsidy for the operating cost we expect. And we also will charge a standard preschool fee. But aside from that, fundraising will have to be undertaken.
John Berryman sees no problem with filling the preschool enrolment target of 40 kids, with 30 places reserved for normal children to provide a role model and stimulus for the 10 or so hearing or sight impaired.
We've very carefully chosen the site at Tingaira Heights as being close to a rapidly growing area with young families and young children, and not well served at this stage by preschools. And we think that, again, the same thing will happen as has been our Sydney experience, that we'll be rushed with applications.